All right, so gonna fix something up here. We're looking at the different types of connective tissue. So one of the things we've been kind of talking about is with the connective tissue, kind of the different parts of what they are. But we're going to take a look now at connective tissue proper, which would be the combination of connective tissue proper and a couple other things. But we're going to look at connective tissue proper, which we're going to see there is what we refer to as loose connective tissue, which is a combination of areolar, reticular, and adipose tissue, which you can see is right over here. We are then also going to talk about dense connective tissues, really two main connective tissue proper types, and then a third, dense elastic. So we'll have what are considered dense regular and dense irregular. The main thing with loose connective tissues, lots of space, not a lot of cells, not a lot of fibers. With dense connective tissue, it's going to be a lot of fibers, but not a lot of space or cells. We're going to see when we talk about adipose tissue, it's going to be just kind of a level of adipose tissue in that particular area. So again, if we're looking at really the main types that we're going to be looking at of these different types of connective tissue propers, these would be the four classes that fall into true connective tissue proper. Like I said, with connective tissue proper, I also talk about dense elastic and adipose tissue as a type of loose connective tissue. Main thing when we're comparing loose and dense connective tissue, you can see it in a couple different images here. You can see the areas where the D is the dense area. You can see that there is a lot more in the way of fibers in those areas. Where loose, you see a lot more white, which means lack of staining, which means there's really not a lot of fibers, there's not a lot of cells, just space in those areas. And that's really the main difference between the loose and dense connective tissues in terms of the overarching idea. We're going to see what the different types, the orientation of fibers, the types of fibers can play a role in how we classify some of those. Again, on these ones, generally we have loose connective tissue right next to the epithelium, as you can see in the case with skin right here. And then you have some denser connective tissue underneath that, holding that upper layers to it. So loose areolar is going to be the first one we take a look at. This one does have a decent amount of cells. It's mainly going to be fibroblasts and a lot of the different immune cells. You have some thin collagen fibers that are staining pink in there, but we don't see any big bundles of them. You also have some elastic fibers that are in there. Loose connection, flexible, is right next to epithelium, around each muscle, around each nerve, around each blood vessel. Where the loose reticular tissue, this is found mainly in lymphatic organs, things like lymph nodes, spleen, and bone marrow. This provides kind of the structure for the actual cells of that tissue to kind of be connected to it. Generally stained with a silver stain, so the fibers always appear black, where if we look at dense regular and dense irregular, these both have thick bundles of collagen, not a lot of ground substance. The main difference between them in dense irregular, you can see the fibers do not have a particular orientation. They're going all different directions. For dense regular, all the fibers are running parallel. Because of that, these have a really good stretch in one particular direction and can resist in one direction, but are not particularly strong against multiple directions. We see these in areas where it only get pulled on in one direction, things like tendons and ligaments, where the dense irregular is going to be, like I said, less flexible than some of the loose stuff here, but definitely has a little bit more flexibility in multiple directions than the dense regular, but it is going to resist pulling in all directions, and we see this underlying the skin, surrounding organs, things like a perichondrium, a periosteum, these membranes that surround bones and cartilage are other examples where we'd see this. And again, you can see the kind of orientation with all epithelium. Pretty much you're going to have epithelium, loose connective tissue just underneath it, and dense further under that. Generally within loose connective tissue, we're going to see a decent amount of cells. This is not really representative though. It's usually a lot more space than anything else. It does provide a spot for blood vessels to travel through, a spot for nerves to travel through. We see a decent amount of cells in there, but not nearly as much as you would see in like epithelial tissue. The other thing we don't see is these big bundles of collagen. So the arrows on this one, we're pointing at blood vessels particularly. So areolar connective tissue is the first one that we talk about. It is this really probably the loosest of the loose connective tissues. It's going to have collagen fibers. It's going to have elastic fibers. There might be some reticular fibers in there, but not a lot. I mean, we're going to see fibroblasts and really all the different immune cells we talked about, mast cells, the different white blood cells, plasma cells, they're all going to be in there. Lots of space. And really, this is where a lot of the blood, because it's underlying epithelium and everything else like that. It's a lot of our wiring and plumbing, as I like to say, in the body travels through these areas. So we're going to have lots of blood vessels in these, lots of nerves, lots of lymphatic vessels. These are supplying all those overlying tissues because this provides a good space. It is also a good arena for immune cells to kind of deal with stuff. We find this, I mean, honestly, almost everywhere. It underlies all epithelium. It surrounds all blood vessels, all nerves. It's between each muscle cell. It's under a lot of our membranes that are surrounding different organs. So again, it's found all over the place in the body. Again, what is it doing? Well, it's not tightly connecting it, but it's loosely binding this tissue to the overlying, to deeper stuff underneath it. And again, provides a good area for immune defense, provides areas for blood vessels, nerves, lymphatics to travel through it, and allows those overlying tissues to pick up their nutrients and get rid of their waste really easily. You can see a kind of picture of it right here. You can see the pink fibers. This is a cartoon version. The pink fibers are right here. Those would be collagen fibers. The elastic fibers are generally a little bit more purple. And this is pointing out things like lymphocytes, macrophages, fibroblasts. You might see mast cells in here. Those are all the different things that we would see in areolar connective tissue.